Okay, students, today we're going to write and graph linear equations. This is another topic that is also a review of our algebra skills. Okay, today what we're going to start with is linear equations. And linear equations, they come in slope-intercept form and standard form are the two forms that are the most popular. Before I start this one, I just wanted to go through and remind you that the m in the slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, the m stands for slope, which is also the rise over the run. It's also considered the vertical change, over the horizontal change, or it's going to be considered the change in y over the change in x. And we represent that with a Greek letter delta. And delta looks like a triangle, but it's heavy on one side. That means change in y over change in x. Remember, folks, that m, and I'm going to write this over here on the side because I don't have any more room, m is the movement between the points. It's how we get from one point to the other. And I'm going to call that how we get from point A to point B. Okay. The B in this equation stands for the y-intercept. You can think of B as standing for beginning, but if you think about it, a line doesn't have a beginning place, and it doesn't have an ending place. It just starts, you can say it starts in the middle, and it stretches out in all directions, in both sides. So there's no beginning or end. However, most lines will cross the y-axis. The only lines that don't cross the y-axis are the ones, if you look at this graph, the only ones that don't cross the y-axis are the ones that are vertical. So we like to think of the B as beginning, and it's where it crosses the y-axis, the y-intercept. All right, next is standard form. And standard form is written as ax plus by equals c. Now, x-intercept, if you're looking at a graph, the x-intercept is where it touches, down here, x-intercept is where a line touches the x-axis. This is the x-axis, this is the y. So right here, that point where those lines intersect, that is the x-intercept. It's where the line intersects the x-axis. And it's always going to be at x, comma, 0. The y will always be at 0. So up here, what we want to do is we want to plug in a 0 for the y. When you do that, it will cancel out this term. So you will have, by making let y equal 0, it will eliminate this term here, and you will have ax equaling c. Solving for x, you just divide both sides by a. So you know that x will equal c divided by a. So whatever coefficient number is in front of the x, all you have to do is take the number that's by itself and divide it by that coefficient. So this point right here will always be at c divided by a, comma, 0. The y-intercept down here, if I draw another line, I'm going to draw it this way this time, is where the y-intercept is where it touches the y-axis. So we're talking about this point right here, where the line intersects the y-axis. This is your x and this is your y, of course. Okay, so here, this point will always be, your x is going to be 0 because it doesn't move right or left, but it does move up or down. So it'll be 0, comma, that's supposed to be a 0, comma, y. So that means that you're going to take this standard equation and you're going to plug in a 0. If I plug in a 0 here, that goes away, that term disappears. So we end up with by equaling c. So we start by letting x equals 0, and we end up with y equals, if you look at that, what does y equal? To find y, I have to divide both sides by b. So y would equal c divided by b. So this point, the y-intercept, will always be at 0, comma, c divided by b. Okay, so this is the linear equation slope-intercept form, and this one is standard form. Now we have two different kinds of lines we're going to talk about today, parallel and perpendicular. Parallel, you may remember from a previous lesson that they have the same slopes and you know that your M1 is equal to M2. Noticing here, if I call this one line 1 and this one line 2, look at your slope, the coefficient in front of the x, that is M1 equals 3. Look here, the coefficient in front of this x, that's your slope for line 2, that's also 3. Since they have the same slopes, we say if M1 is equal to M2, slope 1 is equal to slope 2, then line 1 is parallel to line 2. Okay, the next one, perpendicular lines, you may recall from a previous lesson that they are negative reciprocals. Okay, so what that means is we have this perpendicular line test to see if two lines are perpendicular. Perpendicular, that's the symbol for perpendicular. And just to remind you, this symbol right here is the symbol for parallel. So perpendicular line test says that if you take the two slopes and you multiply them together, it should give you a -1. And if that happens, then your line 1 is going to be perpendicular to line 2. Let's take a look at this one. This is our line 1. This is my line 2. My slope here for line 1 is 3. My slope here for line 2 is -1/3. If I take these two and I multiply them together, I'm going to do this over here to the side. I'm going to rotate my paper around. That's going to be +3 for the first slope and -1/3 for the second slope. Remember, 3 is a whole number, so you can write 3 over 1. When you multiply straight across, you get -3 over 3, which equals -1. Okay, since that is -1, we know that line 1 is perpendicular to line 2. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to color code my paper. I'm going to choose a good color here. I'm going to choose orange. to color in slope-intercept form. Anything with slope-intercept form is going to be in orange. So down here it says, write an equation for the line. Whenever I have a graph and a line on it, the best way to do this is to write it in slope-intercept form. It is an easy way of doing this. Okay, so here, where does it cross the y-axis? The beginning. Well, it crosses here. The b crosses the y-axis at -2. So I say my b is -2. Then what I have to do is find my slope. To find my slope, I am looking for how am I getting from one point to the other. So my slope, I'm going to go down 1, right 1. So down 1, right 1 means that that is -1 over 1, which is just -1. So y equals -1x plus b, which is -2. And then we need to write this in the most simplified form. The most simplified form, we don't usually write a 1 in front of the x, so we write it as -x. We usually don't put plus a negative, we usually just write it as minus. So this would be the most simplified form. Okay, here's the next one. Where does it cross the y-axis? Well, it's crossing here. B is crossing at 1, 2, 3, -3. Now take a look. How do I get from point A to point B, or to the next point? Here's the next point. Well, to get from point to point, I have to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to be up, I'm going to write it over here, up 4, right 1. Test it again just to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, up 4, right 1. So that's going to be 4 over 1, which is just 4. So my slope is 4. So go ahead and write that out. Y equals 4x plus a -3. And remember, we usually don't write this. My most simplified form is 4x minus 3. Okay. All right. And again, that was slope-intercept form. So these two examples that I just did here are slope-intercept form. The next one says write an equation in slope-intercept form. Here it is again, slope-intercept form, given a slope and a y-intercept. Okay, let's take a look at these. This is my b. This is my slope. Remember, b is, if you look up here, is the y. Where does it cross the y-axis? Well, the b is +4. What is this b? The b would be 0. This b equals 2. And this one says, the slope is undefined. So we're going to have to make this one a special case. So we'll just put a little star by that one. Because remember, undefined, that's going to be a vertical line. And you may recall from our previous notes that when you have the slope that's 0, like this one, slope is 0, that's going to be horizontal line. Okay, so back to this. Here we have y equals, there's my slope, 2/3 x, and that's going to be +4, so that's +4. That's all I do for this one. This one, I have y equals, there's my slope, -5/8 x, and then +0. But we usually don't write the +0. We just let that drop off. And my most simplified form would be this. Y equals -5/8 x. This one here, this one is going to be y equals the 0 times the x plus 2. That would drop off to simplify it, so it's just y equals 2. And remember, this is a horizontal line. So a horizontal line looks kind of like the x-axis, but notice how the equation of line is y equals 2. because it doesn't matter what x is. X could be 0, y would be 2. X could be negative 100, y would be equal to 2. Okay, over here, this is going to be the opposite. It's going to be straight up and down, vertical line, because that has an undefined slope. So here, they're saying that it's going to be a vertical line at x equals negative 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it would be that vertical line right here. So what is x equal? Negative 4. And that would be the equation of the line. Okay, next page. On the next page it says, graph each of the following using the slope and the y-intercept. Well, here my slope is negative 3. I can write that as negative 3 over 1, or I can write it as 3 over negative 1. My b is at 1. So to graph this, I'm going to put a dot on 1, and I'm going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3 over 1, 1, 2, 3 over 1, or I could go up 3, 1, 2, 3, but I'd have to go left 1. So if I connect the dots, then there's my line. Okay, the next one over here, if you notice this one is going to be, my slope is 2, but my b doesn't exist. It's not up here. So I say b is 0. So I'm going to put a dot here at 0, and to get to all my other points, I'm going to go up 2, over 1, up 2, to the right 1, or I could go down 2, but I'd have to go left 1, down 2, left 1. So here, connecting all my dots, there's my line. And again, that's also in orange because that was using the slope-intercept form. So this one's orange and this one's orange. Okay, this one here is in standard form. So over here on this side, I'm going to take a different color, blue, and I'm going to color in standard form. And then I'm going to color this in because I'm going to use, I want you to remember that this was standard form. For standard form, I need to find my x-intercept and my y-intercept. The x-intercept is going to be c divided by a, comma, 0. The y-intercept, remember, is going to be 0, comma, c divided by b. My a is right here, my b is right here, and this is my c. So to get the x-intercept where it crosses the x-axis, it's going to be at negative 10 divided by 8, comma, 0. I need to reduce this. If you plug that into a calculator, you're going to end up with negative 1.25, comma, 0. So negative 1.25 would be about right here, and 0. Okay, so there's my first point. Now I have to find the y. Y is going to be 0, comma, negative 10 divided by b, which is 2. So here, y is going to be at negative 5. So here, I don't move right or left, but I go down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this one, I'm going to use a straight edge, and I'm going to connect my dots. And that's how I graph using the standard equation. Let's practice that again one more time. On this one, my a is negative 1, my b is 3, and my c is negative 9. So my x-intercept is going to be negative 9 divided by negative 1. So 9 divided by 9, so that's going to be x equals 9 comma 0. Then y is going to be negative 9 divided by 3. Oops, sorry, I forgot to put the 0. It's supposed to be 0 comma negative 9 divided by 3. Okay, so y equals 0 comma, reduce that, and you get negative 3. So here, what I need to do is I need to graph, and it's going to go off the graph just a little bit because the chart that I drew is not big enough. So it's going to go, and I'm going to move this over just a little bit because I wrote right here, and I need to stretch this out just a tiny bit. Okay, so that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, so here we are going to have this at 9, 0. So right there. And this one's going to be at 0, negative 3. 1, 2, 3. All I have to do is connect my dots, and there's my line. And again, I was using the standard form for this one, so I'm going to shade this one in blue, just to remind myself that that's what I was doing. Okay, so graph y equals 4 and x equals 4. Are the lines parallel or perpendicular or neither? So here, y equals 4, I can do a t-chart if I want. I can say, okay, well, if x equals negative 1, what is y going to be? 4. If x equals 0, what is y going to be? You got it, 4. If x equals positive 1, what is y going to be? 4. It doesn't matter what the x is. Y is going to equal 4. So to draw that, that's going to be, here's my x-axis, here's my y. I can plot these points, 0, 4, negative 1, 4, 1, 4. It's going to be this line right here. The next one, x equals positive 4, so you got it. This is going to be 4, 4, 4, and it doesn't matter what y is. Y could be negative 1, 0, and 1, but x is going to equal 4. So go over here, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0. This is 4, negative 1, and here's 4, positive 1. Connect these dots, and there is your x equals 4. So now you answer. Are they parallel? No, because they intersect right here. Okay, so are they perpendicular? Well, yes. If you have a horizontal line and a vertical line, those are considered to be perpendicular. So the answer is perpendicular. And I'm going to write the symbol as opposed to the actual word. Okay, the final one for today is the point-slope form. Here's your point-slope formula right here. And this is located on your EOC chart, your star chart, or your text chart. So you don't have to memorize it. But you want to use this formula anytime you're given a point and a slope. Let's take a look at this example. What is the equation of a line whose slope is 3 and contains the point 2, 4? This is your m, and this right here is your x1 and your y1. So you want to take these three numbers and place them accordingly into this formula. I start with y1. y1 is 4 minus y equals 3 for the m, parentheses, 2 for the x1 minus x. Now that's it for the geometry. The rest of this is algebra. You have to distribute your 3, so that's going to be 4 minus y equals 6 minus 3x. And usually we write things in the slope-intercept form, so that means solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides, negative y equals, that's going to be 2 minus 3x. And then I'm going to change the sign of each one, so it's y equals 2 minus 3x. And you're done. That's it for today's lesson.